I tried writing my first novel when I was 17. 35 single-spaced pages of stilted dialogue and two-dimensional characters. It was terrible, and I knew it. At the time, the book Failsafe and the movie based on it were very popular. It was set during the Cold War, and the plot revolved around a mistake that brought the world to the brink of nuclear devastation. A decision by the American president narrowly averted mutual assured annihilation, but it cost each side a city, Washington, D.C. and Moscow. For whatever reason, I couldn't help wondering how the story would have played out if it hadn't been avoided and the world had gone over the edge. Teens sometimes do get morose thoughts, you know. In short, I decided to write a novel with my own version of the story. I wrote page after page and pounded away on my mother's portable typewriter until I produced that 35-page single-spaced masterpiece of implausible events in nondescript settings with two-dimensional characters speaking lines of stilted dialogue. It was, and still is, an embarrassment. It may be hard to believe, but here, decades later, I came across it. Why I kept it, I have no clue. But as long as it was here, a few days ago, I leafed through it for the first time. It was nearly as awful as I'd imagined it to be. Not long after I wrote it, I gave it to my aunt to read, and she had it for years. I only got it back after she died, so she was the only one who ever read it, and I planned for it to stay that way. Even when I gave it to her way back then, I knew it was pretty bad, even though it had all the basic elements that I thought made up a novel. It had characters and settings, descriptions and dialogue. It started at a beginning, it had a middle where stuff happened, and, spoiler alert, wound up at an ending where everything blew up. I even typed "the end" in red ink, kind of obvious considering the ending. Getting all the way through to the end gave me a sense of accomplishment. What it didn't give me was a sense of satisfaction. I know now that it was because I'd written a long narrative where this happened and then that happened and the other thing happened. But as a story, it was dead on arrival, and I knew it. I just didn't understand why. After all, I'd read a lot of novels, but I hadn't taken a creative writing course, so I had no idea what those authors' stories had that mine didn't. It only succeeded in convincing me that I didn't have what it took to be a novelist. Even so, there was something buried deep in the recesses of my subconscious that told me I could be one if I only found out how. The key was handed to me on a silver platter decades later, after I'd retired. My friend Steve Black is a bona fide scriptwriter who made his living writing for television shows like Falcon Crest, Dynasty, and The Love Boat. He's written plays and books, and one day, about 5 years ago, I confessed to him my secret ambition to write a novel, but I didn't know where to begin. I wondered if he knew the secret and could let me in on it. He was happy to help, but it turned out not to be as big a secret as I'd thought. Steve recommended a book to me that he used as his writer's Bible, Right Away by Elizabeth George. I know there are many other books out there on the writing craft, but that was the one that did it for me. I took her approach to heart. She believed that before theme, before plot, or anything else, the starting point was the main character. First, find out their name. Then research them to as great a depth and in as much detail as possible. And sure enough, it worked. As soon as Jared got his name, his story started to unfold. Who were his parents? Did he have siblings? What did he look like? What kind of car did he drive? Where did he live? Almost immediately after I met Jared, the magic that I think every novelist experiences started happening to me. Jared started telling me about himself. He let me know what he liked about where I was going with him and what he just wouldn't accept. He liked his name. That was an excellent start. I wrote page after page of details about him and his life, especially what he wanted out of life. I explored his goals and what made him tick. I examined his strengths and good points, his weaknesses and flaws. It took a long time, but gradually he came alive for me. As he revealed his backstory, he disclosed the people and events that made him the man he was. And the more I understood, the clearer his life's trajectory became. It was then that the outline of his story began to take shape. His past, his backstory, made him the person he was, but his strengths and weaknesses would determine the arc of his story going forward. Every like and dislike, every one of his quirks had behind it a why, and it was up to me to discover as many of those whys as possible. It was they that would steer him through the coming obstacles. In fact, they would even determine what form those obstacles would take. The thrill and excitement of authorship is just this, that I can enter into dialogue with my characters and let them reveal their stories. I may think at the outset that I know where the story arc is going, but my characters never cease to surprise and amaze me. The twists and turns that make up my stories are never exactly what I expected them to be, and sometimes my characters force the whole thrust of the story in an entirely different direction. You know, every writer has their own particular way of interacting with their stories, and this happens to be mine. We all have advice to give. The internet is full of how to write instructions. My advice is to get into intimate relationship with your characters. Learn everything you can about them before you begin writing, not just your main character, but at least all the important ones. Ask them about themselves. They'll tell you. Add to your character notes new details as soon as they emerge. And don't be in too much of a hurry. Front-loading your explorations is more effective than backpedaling. Whenever someone new and unexpected shows up, take time to get to know them. Ask them questions. Write down their answers, because unimportant characters suddenly become important, and the details you'll learn about them will matter, sometimes even changing the outcome of scenes or the whole story. Let your characters surprise you. I think that's half the fun of writing. And just a reminder that I'm preparing to post the first 3 chapters of my 5th book, Sycamore Boy, on Substack. Be sure you've subscribed to my Substack account so you don't miss it.